So we're a not-for-profit organization that focuses on bringing working scientists, bench scientists, to the forefront of education and advocacy, both through our website, which you can go visit. We have a number of really great blogs, and through outreach events like the one you're at right now, being given by me. So knowing more about science, it really improves your life and helps you make better decisions, especially if you know more about the health side, or we're going to talk more today about the technology that's going on. And science is really cool, and we want you to think it's really cool too. So that's that. And like she said, feel free to interact with me. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to, don't be afraid. I'm pretty friendly. And if I lose you at any point, if at any point you're like, well, what about this? Feel free to interrupt me. You don't have to save them until the end. So to make this talk, I did what all people do when they're going to look up something, and I went to Google. And I typed in GMO and hit enter, and what came out at me was incredibly scary. I got a lot of really intense GMOs are the worst thing on earth articles, and I got a lot of scary images that look like this. A lot of drugs and food combo, a lot of syringes. They're really into making these. A lot of labels slapped on things. So I wanted to ask you guys, when you hear GMOs or when you hear people talk about them, what comes up? What do you guys talk about? Monsanto, yeah. So if anybody doesn't know, I'm hard-pressed to see anybody that doesn't know, but they're a company that has been making a lot of GMOs that are, in particular, herbicide and pesticide resistant, and that has had a lot of throwback from the community. But I think they do other nice things that just don't get publicized. So yeah, Monsanto was talked about a lot. What else? Yeah.
I have a general question about Monsanto feeling.
Totally.
Do you generally feel about pharmaceutical companies the same way you do about Monsanto? And do you generally think about pharmaceutical companies that there's a trade-off there, that trying to eat pharmaceuticals and understand that there's a balance that has to be struck? Or do you feel like that's totally different, you just like Monsanto? And I won't work for Monsanto.
I don't work for Monsanto either.
I'm just curious because I feel like it's a similar kind of industry that it's easy to understand why we need pharmaceuticals, but it's harder to wrap your head around why we need a food supply that's as fast.
Well, the way you framed it is that we somehow need
Monsanto.
No, we need these genetically modified food organisms.
Okay.
Right? In the same way that we might need drugs.
Okay.
Which I don't think is a fair comparison at all. I'm not saying that drugs are not bad. Drugs have very many uses, and so do certain, modified foods.
Right.
But I don't think the comparison is a fair comparison necessarily.
Yeah, we'll chat about that at the end. We've got a consequences business that we can chat about. Yeah, of course.
I think about GMO.
Yeah.
I think that since the agricultural revolution 6,000 years ago, pretty much every food we eat today is a GMO source.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So that's not a comparison either. That's not fair at all.
That's not fair.
No.
Okay.
Have you seen the actual land-raised version of corn, TSO?
No, that's not the same.
It's really not something my girl,
To do Mendelian genetic modification or selection is not the same process. It is not the same process. The same chemical outputs that you are going to get from that are not going to be the same. So I don't think there's a that's not exactly comparison.
Yeah, we can chat about that towards the end, which will be good. I have a whole kind of consequences section built in, but I'm just going through the technology. This is just to get our groove on about GMOs, to get our minds ready. Yeah, what's up?
I guess I think about yellow rice, the baby carrot rice project. That's my
Yeah, that's my example today, so we'll go right through that. That's good. Yeah, you had your hand up, or?
I was investing.
Oh, those guys too. Oh, well, that's good. You guys are preempting. That's great. Yeah, so we have a mix of positive and negative, and it talks about Monsanto, which are generally negative. So we've got a mix out there. Usually, what you're going to find on the internet is a lot of really negative things. It was very hard for me to find anything positive and very hard to find anything unbiased. So today's kind of talk is aimed to be just about the technology behind it, and then, you know, if we want to go debate morals later towards the end, we can do that. So this is hopefully a very factual, unbiased representation. So in case you're wondering, we're all talking about GMOs. It stands for genetically modified organism. And I think a lot of people find this term a little intimidating, just because you use the term organism up in there. So an organism is pretty much anything living. You've got us, animals, plants, even all the way back to bacteria, which I think people are a little confused about. And then you genetically modify. So I've got a nice little pictorial representation. So you start with an apple, and the apple's got its own DNA in there. So there's a lot of talk about people that want to advertise if any food contains DNA. And it all does. I was very confused when I heard about that. So you start with DNA in the apple, and then what you're adding is only a little bit. You're only kind of tapping on to the end. So the majority, you're still going to end up with an apple. You see a lot of pictures of, you know, something that looks like a kiwi, and then they've cut it open and it's an orange inside. You're not going to get that. So this is one thing, but genetic modification also includes if you remove a piece of DNA, or if you switch things around, or if you change only one little piece of it. That's all considered genetic modification. But the real question is, why even bother? Why modify the DNA specifically? There's a lot of other stuff that seems to be going on with an apple. Why pick DNA? Well, DNA is a code. And you hear that a lot, but what does that even mean? I mean, you see these helix, and you see all the letters all the time. If you watched Jurassic World, they had that up on all the screens. So DNA is a code in the same way that binary is a code for computers. But instead of a code of zeros and ones, it's a code of 4 letters, A, G, T, and C. And each rung of this ladder represents a different letter. But, you know, that makes sense. DNA is a code, DNA's got all that going on. But what is the code for? You hear it's the recipe for life and all that. And to really get at what it's code for, you kind of have to understand cells. So you see these nice static pictures of cells, and you think, oh, aren't those pretty? We're made of those. But what these static pictures don't show is that cells are actually alive. Yes, I understand this one's a donut, but wouldn't it be great, you know? Your donut replicates overnight, you have 2 donuts.
But it's not how Dunkin' Donuts does it.
No, I don't think so. Theirs are a little too stale. No, but I mean, no one's seeing these GIFs. I mean, you know, cells move around, they replicate, they communicate with one another, they have to get nutrients, get rid of waste, they have to do all of these things. But how are they doing them? They're so small, you know, we're made up of trillions of cells. How are they performing the functions that we have to perform on a daily basis? And the answer to that is proteins. So proteins are essentially the machines of the cell. They're the workhorses. So here I have some examples of proteins. So this guy here, the pink thing is really the protein, and this is all inside the cell. So the pink thing is essentially the tractor-trailer truck of the cell. So it's carrying this kind of big blobby cargo from one part of the cell to the other by doing this kind of walking step. And the road that it's walking on is also made of protein. And then on this side, we've got a protein that focuses its energy, that's jiggly, on being the kind of exoskeleton, well, endoskeleton of the cell, regular skeleton. And it has the cell hold shape and be able to move. And so, you know, proteins, they're just machines. So that's how the cell is doing all of the stuff that it has to do. And there's a machine that does everything that the cell has to do. Thousands, even probably billions of proteins out there. So, how does that connect to DNA? So, I like to use an IKEA example for this. Say you want to build this lovely IKEA desk. You've went out, you've purchased it, you bring it home, and it's, you know, it's just a bunch of pieces. Doesn't mean you have a desk yet. What do you need to put your desk together?
Instructions.
Yeah, you need instructions. You need a manual. You need a manual for your desk. But you don't want just a desk in your apartment. That's pretty lonely. You need more furniture. And with every new piece of furniture, you need another manual. So one manual is for one piece. And in this case, proteins are your furniture. And DNA is your manual. So that's kind of how we're related. DNA has all the information that the cell needs to make each one of its proteins. And it's also got all of the information on when you want the protein. So you don't want to get your desk before you have an appointment, in that case. So DNA just has all of the information for that. But it's really all about the machines. I mean, we say that this is going on, but the DNA is just kind of the way to get to the proteins. The proteins, the machines, are what we really care about. So if we go back to our apples, essentially what's going on is you're adding a new manual to your apple, and you're getting a new machine in it. And it works in reverse too. So if you start with the machine and maybe this one's broken, it's doing kind of a bad thing, making the apple sick, it got mutated in some way, you can remove that manual and no longer have that protein. So why do we modify DNA? Well, we want to make a change on the protein level. And DNA is the best and easiest way to consistently do that all the time. If you give it the manual, it'll know how to make it forever. So any questions about that before we move to a bigger why question rather than a specific why DNA question? All right, cool stuff. So why change the code in a bigger sense? Yeah, what's up?
I just feel like there can't be no questions about that. Like, is anyone curious about like how permanent that is, or like what it really means? Like, once you change the manual, like, is that going to morph into something else? Is it going to spread into the outline community, or are those like reasonable questions?
Whether it's a GMO or not.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. I just meant, like, I thought that was a general question. Like, it's not my.
Oh yeah. No, that's fine.
But the rate of mutation of an apple is not the rate of mutation of HIV.
And,
Yeah.
and GMO
influenza, which is even faster than HIV.
And there's no reason to suggest that GMO like modification would increase the rate of mutation in a specific thing. And it is true that it's possible for any gene to introgress into something to escape out into the wild. But there are, there are moments in time where genes can jump species or jump, even from eukaryotes to prokaryotes and backwards and forwards.
That won't just happen with GMOs.
It happens with every.
Yeah.
So why?
I'm not.
This question's always come
I
up.
just meant that I felt like that question was skipped over kind of quickly, but I feel like there are things to like mention there.
Yeah, I mean, once you put the
There's legal
DNA.
questions attached with it that I think are not just pure science stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, plus, the genetically modified organism doesn't necessarily require changing the DNA. You could just do an epigenetics change to the organism and have the same effect or similar level of power.
But sometimes, right?
Would that be as permanent?
You
Because
can
if
go
you're just
multiple
adding-
generations.
But how permanent would it be? Because isn't that adding or removing either a single or methyl group? I mean, it sounds like that would fall off more easily than like really integrate something.
Well, what if you want something to go a couple generations and then intentionally fall?
But here's the thing
Let's
too,
do it.
you're limited in your applications there. Like, if you want to knock something out, then that's a possible application of that. You can damp it down, the ability of that gene to express. But you can't introgress and move the gene in to epigenetic phenotypes. Which
Yeah,
often
what-
is what you want, right?
I have a question about the definition of GMOs.
Yeah, of course.
GMO, it's also GMO when, of course, in nature, like genetic transfer of genes from one organism to another through a virus or hybridization. Is that considered GMO, or only when man actually consciously makes that modification is a GMO?
I don't know in public what people consider. Like, I would consider that genetic modification because it's not an evolutionary mutation like normal progression, but yeah, it depends on who you ask.
There's a selection mechanism because if you find modifications that occur naturally that you like,
Yeah, that's true.
you tend to promote those. And that goes back to one of the things I talked about earlier, strawberries. If you look at strawberries 7,000 years ago, they look very different than the kind of strawberries you find in ShopRite or your local grocery.
We had a talk at Rockefeller saying that actually there are so many mutations that happen all the time. We have no evolutionary selectivity. We are drifting all the time. The advantageous stay. Sometimes even the non-advantageous. It does. If they're non-advantageous, they will go. If they are neutral, they will stay. So we are drifting genetically all the time. If nature does it, we tend to call it mutation. If human does it, we tend to call it genetic modification.
And humans have for a long time had a tendency to try to fix or capture mutations that are beneficial. And the question that you had about strawberries is actually something that the phenomenon you see in strawberries and like with polyploidization, which is actually like a phenomenon that we fix oftentimes in agriculture, where you double or triple or quadruple or on and on and on, multiply the number of genomes copies that you have in any one individual cell. But that's actually a process that's been native to plants for about as far as we can tell, because plants don't have sex chromosomes, so diploidization, polyploidization isn't so much of a problem. So you end up with this cycle. It's actually literally a cycle of diploidization and then haploidization, that you cycle, you double your genome, and then you decrease the number of inefficient genes because you want to come back down to that reasonable size for your nucleus. So you end up with specialization of genes that's beneficial, as well as increased volume of fruits, plants, that kind of thing.
But as farmers, you have a
We
choice of what
volume
you
of the
see.
fruit, right? Yeah. And when the size of the strawberry doubles, you're like, I don't want that guy. Which is why it's hexaploid, and most of the crops we eat are polyploid. But it's also a natural cycle that just happens in nature.
What are some people's thoughts on the sweet potato that was recently found with the bacterial DNA in it that they're calling the all-natural GMO?
Well, but that's not new.
I feel like mutations happen all the time. Horizontal transfer.
Yeah. Horizontal gene transfer.
Gene transfer. It happens all the time. So, and they aren't always beneficial, even when it happens in nature. We talk about nature all the time as if it always knows what it's doing. It's incredibly random. The only difference now is that instead of waiting for nature to do something completely random, we're pinpointing what we want and then looking at how to get it. It all depends on whether it's being done smartly and for the right reasons. But I don't actually see GMOs as being something incredibly unnatural. I actually see biotechnology in general as being natural because, we're introducing a new little piece of code, but the cell is copying it the same way it always would. And, you could wait thousands of years for this sort of thing to happen, but now we're smart enough that we can make it happen ourselves.
There's also a scenario where, say, a gene was already in a species that you wanted, but it wasn't the breed that you wanted, but it was just too close to the centromere. Physically, the limitations of breeding mean that if it's too close to the centromere, we can't get crossover, so we can't breed it naturally into some other line. Which means that just because this one gene is already in the species you're talking about, it's not even just by chance, it might just be in a region where we can't cross it. Okay, right, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, if you get a bunch of scientists in a room, we'll talk forever.
Does anyone know where ruby red grapefruit came from? We had a very interesting speaker that looks at the history of modified organisms. The way they used to produce new varieties is they used to put a radiation source in the center of a field and plant the crop in a circle around it. And wait for something interesting to happen. And that's where the ruby red grapefruit that you eat from the grocery store comes from. Mutations.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the good old days of natural farming?
What happens in a case like that? You change the color, you change the flavor, is the nutritional value changed?
One has nothing to do with the other.
But it can.
I'm
It
sorry.
can or it can't.
I don't know how to keep.
So let's say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, that's totally all right.
All right.
All right, so, you can talk all day kind of about molecular things, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of detail that you can go into for a really long time. But looking at the big picture of why you would even want to change the DNA to begin with, 32,000 years ago, the only dog we had was this wolf, which is nice. But through picking at the wolf and saying, oh yeah, maybe I like this coat color a little better, and selectively breeding those, you end up with all kinds of really adorable dogs, which is great. And the only way that we're able to do this is, one, through time. you know, picking out the best ones that you want and going over time and breeding those together to create this nice sandy color or this darker color here, or size difference. The other way that we're able to do this is because there's already a lot of variation. So if you want to pick out a lot of different coat colors, there's already a lot of coat colors here to kind of select from and pick the best wool for that. But we don't always have time and variation on our side. So this was a New York Times article back from January of 2014, and what it addresses is farmers in Hawaii. And what they farm is the rainbow papaya. And while I'm sure all of you know that we get sick with viruses and sometimes we even die, it's less known that absolutely every organism can be infected by viruses. Different viruses, but still infected, from other animals, plants, even down to bacteria get infected by viruses. So right now the rainbow papaya is having a particularly tough time in life. It is being infected by the papaya ring spot virus. And it's devastating on the same level that the plague was devastating to humans, if you remember that from history class. And we've got a few options for what we can really do about it. One option is do nothing. And that kind of has two outcomes. The best outcome is that we find some trees that were infected with the virus and just, you know, overcame it, got resistance in some way, and from those trees we can repopulate the groves and get the rainbow papaya back. The worst option is that the rainbow papaya is wiped out, and that we no longer have the rainbow papaya for future generations. So that's kind of a really big 50-50 chance to take. There's a whole other option that we can do, which is genetically modify. Help the papaya out and modify it to be resistant to this virus to save it and kind of secure the papaya for the future. And as you can imagine, if you were a papaya farmer, you're a little bit in favor of that one. So why change the code? Well, sometimes we just don't really have time on our side. We don't have thousands of years to just wait and try and pick the best papaya that may or may not happen. Sometimes we have to take matters into our own hands. So that's one example of the why change the code, for necessity reasons. And there's a lot of other whys to change the code, I mean, that are less virtuous in certain ways, but this is one particularly good example, and this article is really great if you are interested in learning more about papaya and Hawaii, which is a really interesting situation.
Would really sort of the native papaya disappear? I don't think so.
It very well might. So the way that...
Is every single papaya going to be devastated?
I mean, this
like,
entire...
I lived in Costa Rica, and there's the cacao.
Oh yeah, there are different papayas, but this papaya is in particular way in danger. Because the way that they usually farm this, I mean, you want all of the papayas in the grove to be very similar. They're a specific type. And so that limits the variation a little. So it's entirely possible that we could lose the rainbow papaya. We might have other types of papaya, but the rainbow one in particular, which I think Hawaii is somewhat famous for, could completely disappear. Yeah, it's a realistic possibility.
Which is an argument against monoculture.
Yeah, it's a pretty big argument against that, but that's already pretty ingrained. So it's a little hard to reverse now that you've already got your whole grove going on.
Is this rainbow variety a human-created organism to begin with?
I'm not sure. I think.
And is this virus targeting the big monster ones that we normally see in vegetable?
I think this is kind of a young one, so I think these do get quite large. But I'm not sure on the actual whether this virus is really devastating to all varieties, or if this one is just getting the most attention for it because it's the most in danger. I'm not sure on that one. Yeah, we won't lose every single papaya, but we might lose this one, and we might lose it a lot. Yeah. Any more papaya questions? All right. So let's get more into the how we change the code. So let's go into the technology a little. And the way that we change the code is through something called genetic engineering, which I'm sure you've heard of, you know, all different places. But you know, if we go back to our apples, this is genetic engineering. And it doesn't necessarily have to be food. We use genetic engineering in the lab all of the time to do all kinds of different things, to do research. So it's not really just a GMO-specific technology, but it boils down into 4 pretty easy steps. So step 1 is to choose the protein that you care about. Step 2 is to find the manual for that protein. You want the DNA that codes for the protein. Step 3, pick a new spot. Where do you want your protein to be now? And step 4, add it. So we're going to go through all of these 4 steps, and we're going to go through them with the golden rice example that you guys mentioned earlier. So step 1, choose the protein. So usually we choose proteins that are particularly relevant for disease purposes or for another problem that's big in the world. So I'm going to kind of stack the deck a little and pick something for us to care about. And what I'm going to pick for us to care about is vitamin A deficiency. So this is a map of the world. Red is clinical deficiency, and green is, not really affected whatsoever. And as you can see, we're totally fine. Canada's fine, but a lot of Africa and a lot of Southeast Asia is having a huge problem with this. And how big of a problem is vitamin A deficiency? Well, it causes 1 to 2 million deaths per year and about 500,000 cases of blindness. To put that into perspective, the number of people that die from cancer in the United States alone is about 600,000. So if you think of all the cancer deaths that you've heard of, well, that's an equal number of blindness cases and 1 to 2 million, so twice the number of deaths. So it's a pretty big global problem. An extra sad fact about these deaths is that vitamin A deficiency really affects children and pregnant women the most. So the majority of these deaths and blindnesses are in children, which is quite sad. So why don't we have this problem? Why is America exempt from this problem? Where are we getting our vitamin A? Yeah.
Serious foods.
Yeah, what's the big one?
Peppers and I think leafy greens.
Leafy greens? Yeah.
Oh, carrots.
Yeah. I'm sure that somebody's mom somewhere told you to eat your carrots, you're good for your eyes, and yeah, they actually are. Yeah, so carrots are one of the big producers of vitamin A, and people in Africa and in Southeast Asia, this is their staple diet. They just don't have anything that naturally has vitamin A present. So wouldn't it be nice if we could make a food for them that they've already eaten, they already plant, that would also contain vitamin A? That'd be great. So vitamin A is in fact not a protein, it is a molecule. And you require proteins to make that molecule. And we don't have them. Carrots are cool, they've got them. Different plants have them. And even down to bacteria have these proteins. So where are we going to get them? Step 2, find the manual to make our vitamin A. So what proteins do we want to pick out? So carrots, being multicellular and a little fancy, they use about 5 proteins to make vitamin A. And the more steps you add to a process, the more chance there is for error. So really what we would want to do is to get the minimum proteins required. And the best way to do that is you start here and you end up there. You can take 5 steps, or if we make this combination, we can take only 2. So one protein is from corn. Corn, normal. Sure, it's making vitamin A. It's a food that we eat all the time. The second protein actually turns out to come from a soil bacteria that works the best. And it's, just one of the bacteria that live in the soil. It doesn't cause any disease to humans or anything like that. But I'm not particularly surprised that bacteria is a good choice for here, and I'll tell you why. So the more complex the organism gets, the more kind of space it has to do things a little more complicated and a little more regulated. So carrots use 5 proteins. There are things that we do that you could probably do with 1 protein, but instead you do it with 7. But bacteria, with their limited space and the fact that the whole organism is just a single cell, their proteins do double duty. Sometimes their proteins can do, 1 job, but maybe even 2 or 3 jobs. So where carrots would use 5 steps, bacteria, their protein can do multiple functions altogether. So it's pretty nice that we can narrow it down to 2. And if you add these 2 proteins to anything, as long as that thing has the starter molecule to begin with, you'll end up with vitamin A out. So that brings us to step 3. Where do we want to put these proteins? So what's a good thing to use? Well, we want it to be a food, so we want them to eat it. And we want it to be something that is eaten and grown very commonly in places that are affected. And the best choice possible is rice. So why couldn't we do what we did with the dogs, from wolves to dogs? Why couldn't we just selectively breed rice? And
My assumption is rice does not have vitamin A to be selective with.
yeah, so that's the real important thing here. There's not a natural variety of rice that's even close to being able to produce vitamin A. There's nothing to select for. You're not like, oh, this one's a little bit closer to making it, so I'll just keep breeding that one. None of them are even a little bit close. So that's where genetic modification really kicks in. Because it's not something that you can do otherwise. Yeah, what's up?
Very simple question, probably wrong, but let's just add carrot juice to rice and we sell the rest.
Yeah, so that's a thing that that they've been trying to combat, but it ends up really expensive to try and ship things there all the time, and to hit every single village in all of these locations. Some of them are really remote, and they'll never get any kind of shipment. And while it is a solution to the problem, it's not a more permanent solution to the problem.
Couldn't people be the carrier? Can't you just give that bacteria set of genes right to the people, and then you don't need the carrier?
Yeah, it's hard to
If that modification is controversial, people modification.
And this is a lot easier.
Ooh, so we're gonna modify you.
That's next week's topic.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to, even then, even if people were like, yes, sign me up, it's hard to hit every single person for that. It's just an impossible goal rather than to hit one rice plant and sell that. Yeah,
So this vitamin A deficiency in these areas has been going on since the dawn of time?
yeah, I mean, it might have been better at some point.
There's never been an indigenous plant in any of these countries that produced vitamin A.
It's like a whole accident or scurvy, but like
Yeah.
some kind of lifestyle or some kind of position.
Probably we notice more now because kids don't die of other things.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we only have one on germ theory pretty recently. Yeah, there's been a lot of
Tomatoes, they don't have bit of carotene and
Yeah, I mean, tomatoes do have it, but I don't know how many of these areas can actually
tomatoes.
grow
Yeah,
tomatoes.
tomatoes need they're different kinds of crops, and some kind of crops need a lot of water. Tomato is the kind of thing that would need a lot of water. Like it does excellent in some place like Virginia.
Yeah.
But in sub-Saharan Africa, you're not going to have, like, unless you have a hothouse that's irrigated, you're not going to have, like, a tomato crop.
It's usually we can't get carrots. It's getting harder to get a hothouse than it's irrigated.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can get water to supply it, too.
Yeah, so rice is a good choice for those reasons. So then we finally get to step 4, which is adding the manual. And this is actually the genetic engineering step. So the first 3 steps were kind of planning and theory, what do I really care about? Where do I want to put this new thing? So this is the kind of action step. And adding the manual into cells is actually not so hard. There are kits that you can buy that just kind of, you follow the steps, it's like baking almost, and you can do this. The harder thing is just because I gave you the manual to your lovely desk does not mean that you actually were able to put together your desk. Sometimes those IKEA manuals are confusing. And the same can go here. You've given it the manual, and in this case we're giving it 2 separate ones to make 2 separate proteins to make vitamin A. It doesn't mean that the cell was able to read them correctly. Perhaps they were inserted in a bad place, or they inserted poorly. So this is kind of the big question of step 4. Did you make the proteins, and are the proteins doing their job appropriately? And that's kind of the main troubleshooting step after adding the manual, because adding it, not so hard. So yeah, overview. We want vitamin A. To get vitamin A, we need proteins to make it. Those proteins work best, one from corn, one from the soil bacteria. We're going to put them into rice, and we're going to check that everything looks good. And in this case, you get a nice visual representation of it looking good. So here was the natural variant of rice, and here's what's so-called golden rice. So the vitamin A gives it this nice golden color, but I don't know how great the resolution is, but you can see that the rice otherwise looks completely identical. We could have just added saffron to that rice and you would get the same kind of color. And I'm not even sure that it would taste differently. I feel like there's not even a taste associated with beta-carotene, so it's the same entirely.
Are they required to test all other properties of the rice anytime the organism is genetically modified or of the apple or whatever?
Yeah, so my next slide is actually on regulation if you're interested. But if anybody has any questions about these steps, we can talk about that before we talk about regulation. Yeah,
Can you talk about quality control, because you said there's going to be mistakes made?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, say it again. What part are you?
Are you going to talk later about quality control, because you said there's a potential for mistakes to be made?
Yeah. We'll get into consequences and problems and things like that.
So how is this different from fortifying food with vitamins?
So I think fortifying is just a coating on top of it. So you would have to, bring the rice to a place that you could coat it and then ship it out. And here,
And that's more expensive.
yeah, here they can actually grow it in their own field and it's already done.
And this is targeted to subsistence farmers, like people who you're eating what you're growing. So it makes sense that it's all there to start with.
Yeah, and another really cool part that they did for this is that the only part of the rice plant that makes this vitamin A is actually the grain of rice itself. The rest of the plant doesn't make it at all. They've added parts to the actual manual that say, oh, only make this in this part of the plant. So it's a pretty minimal change, as minimal as they could possibly make it, which is very cool that they were able to do that, and it's quite successful. What's up?
Excess of vitamin can have significant side effects. Vitamin A.
I don't think anyone would get excess of this. I read some things. I'm not sure if you can have an overdose. The
experience I've had with people who worked in Bill and Melinda Gates style, dosing a community with a vitamin deficiency. The way that these projects generally proceed is that they have medical doctors going first and assess the deficiency, and then they try to come up with a dosage range, and then they're testing and breeding to fall within that range. I mean, this breeding plants and trying to make sure the nutritional value of the plants matches what people need is actually kind of part and parcel of what people in food science do all the time. But this is also built into the
I was just thinking rice is a component of the diet, and once this
I think they're still going to grow the other
races into account. Yeah, the doses are considered into account. I think it's scaled by how much rice a person would eat.
They also have different varieties that produce different amounts. So the corn-soil bacteria combination makes the most possible. They started with one that was 3 different proteins that you added in, and it had a certain fold less.
Is it beta-carotene or vitamin A?
It's beta-carotene, and then you eat it and it becomes vitamin A.
Beta-carotene is so non-toxic.
Oh, yeah.
I used to work for a vitamin company, and the head of the company dosed himself with so much he turned orange. And he walked around orange, and it's perfectly fine.
Because your body feels it.
But as a larger point, I think food scientists and people in the agriculture industry aren't trying to dose someone with whatever amount might be possible. They're trying to scale it to something that's edible.
But if you were going to engineer vitamin into a food, this would be the least, probably the most
helpful.
Vitamin C followed by beta-carotene would probably be the most innocuous things you could put in.
If you notice that people are getting
there's the other rice.
Let's just say there was such a thing as beta-carotene toxicity. You just go, okay, let's cut back on that yellow rice and go back to the white a little bit.
They're not going to only make this from now on. That's not going to happen.
You want to make sure that you're
Is it safe to do genetic engineering with things like precursors like beta-carotene rather than
how much?
So you can't actually engineer in the vitamin itself because it is a molecule, rather than it's not one of the machines, it's not coded by the DNA, it's something that you start with a molecule and you end with a molecule, the proteins have to act on it. So it's not possible to engineer in vitamins, unfortunately.
So it is all of the precursors.
Yeah, so it's all precursors.
It's an enzymatic pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I don't know, there must be a reason why the final step of the pathway is, they probably didn't need it. You could convert beta carotene to vitamin A very easily, so there's no reason to engineer that into your food.
Yeah. All right, shall we talk about some regulations? So, although it is not required, every single GMO that has been designed to be either sold or fed to livestock or anything in the United States has gone through FDA safety. Golden rice has not gone through the FDA because it is not intended for the United States, so why would they send it here? It's gone through stringent testing otherwise, and they make sure that besides the things that you've added in and the outcomes that you expect, nothing else is different about the entire plant. They check, they check nutrients, they check toxins, they check everything.
It's like medical trials, or?
Yeah, I think they're required to do probably testing with rats, and then they also kind of do a breakdown of the cells of the thing itself and make sure that everything is at the normal level.
Yeah, so from my understanding, when I go to they need to be able to show that the compounds found in genetically modified organisms are literally indistinguishable from compounds which are found within naturally occurring.
Yeah.
Which is our lab
Yeah, so
is
they're-
big on that.
Yeah, they're the exact same chemical. And if you go into the FDA, they actually have everything for you to look at. So you can click on all of these, you can see the ones that I clicked on. And the majority of them are herbicide tolerance or insecticide resistant or things like that. But there are others that there's a whole category, change in composition, other, that is, a variety of other things. That's what the golden rice would be under, change in composition. And if you want to check it out, they don't have a really snappy website yet. So this is all of their consultations that they do, because they don't only consult. But then you can go to the biotechnology consultations on food from GE plant varieties. They're not into making things short and snappy. But
So when you go and you do your food shopping, how many things have been modified?
very few now, actually. So although they've checked out and there's up to 150 ones that they've said this is cool, very few of them are actually in the grocery store right now. Some of them are maybe being worked on, or they're waiting to have someone pick them up and actually get them into fields. I think the main ones are probably the corn varieties. There was some tomatoes and some strawberries for a while, but I think they've since stopped.
But it's hard to find anything in the grocery store that's processed food that doesn't have corn in it.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've started marking the corn and soy ones now. But just saying non-GMO doesn't mean as much as I might like it to mean, which we can talk about on the next slide if everyone's taken this picture if they want to. I think we'll also have it places for you to check
Just
out.
one quick question.
Yeah,
This is
of course.
the FDA's